Second-Rate Woman by Rudyard Kipling. Est fuga volvator, rhoda, on we drift where looms the dim port. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, contribute their quota something is gained, if one caught, but the import show it us Hughes of Saxe-Gotha. Master Hughes of Saxe-Gotha. Dressed, don't tell me that woman ever dressed in her life. She stood in the middle of her room, while her gown or her husband it must have been a man threw her clothes at her. She then did her hair with her fingers, and rubbed her bonnet in the flue under the bed. I know. She did as well as if I had assisted at the orgy. Who is she, said Mrs. Hawksby. Don't, said Mrs. Mallow, feebly, you make my head ache, I am miserable today. Stay me with fondants, comfort me with chocolates, for I am did you bring anything from Pelitis? Questions to begin with, you shall have the sweets when you have answered them. Who and what is the creature? There were at least half a dozen men round her, and she appeared to be going to sleep in their midst. Delville, said Mrs. Mallow, shady Delville, to distinguish her from Mrs. Jim of that ilk. She dances as untidily as she dresses, I believe, and her husband is somewhere in Madras. Go and call if you are so interested. What have I to do with Shigramitish women? She merely caught my attention for a minute, and I wondered at the attraction that a dowd has for a certain type of man. I expected to see her walk out of her clothes until I looked at her eyes. Hooks and eyes, surely, drawled Mrs. Mallow. Don't be clever, Polly, you make my head ache, and round this hayrick stood a crowd of Mina, positive crowd. Perhaps they also expected. Polly, don't be Rabelaisian. Mrs. Mallow curled herself up comfortably on the sofa and turned her attention to the sweets. She and Mrs. Hawksby shared the same house at Simla, and these things befell 2 seasons after the matter of Otis year, which has been already recorded. Mrs. Hawksby stepped into the veranda and looked down upon them all, her forehead puckered with thought. Ha, said Mrs. Hawksby, shortly indeed. What is it, said Mrs. Mallow sleepily. That dowd and the dancing master to whom I object. Why, to the dancing master, he is a middle-aged gentleman of reprobate and romantic tendencies, and tries to be a friend of mine. Then make up your mind to lose him. Dowds cling by nature, and I should imagine that this animal, how terrible her bonnet looks from above, eyes specially clingsome. She is welcome to the dancing master so far as I am concerned. I never could take an interest in a monotonous liar. The frustrated aim of his life is to persuade people that he is a bachelor. 0 Oh, I think I've met that sort of man before, and isn't he? No, he confided that to me a few days ago. Some men ought to be killed. What happened then? He posed as the horror of horrors, a misunderstood man. Heaven knows the femme incomprise is sad enough, and had enough but the other thing. And so fat too, I should have laughed in his face. Men seldom confide in me. How is it they come to you? For the sake of impressing me with their careers in the past, protect me from men with confidences. And yet you encourage them. What can I do? They talk, I listen, and they vow that I am sympathetic. I know, I always profess astonishment, even when the plot ice off the most old possible. Yes, men are so unblushingly explicit, if they are once allowed to talk, whereas women's confidences are full of reservations and fibs, except when they go mad and babble of the unutterabilities, after a week's acquaintance. Really, if you come to consider, we know a great deal more of men than of our own sex. And the extraordinary thing is that men will never believe it. They say, we are trying to hide something. They are generally doing that on their own account. Alas, these chocolates pall upon me, and I haven't eaten more than a dozen. I think I shall go to sleep. Then y'all get fat, dear, if you took more exercise and a more intelligent interest in your neighbors. You would be as much loved as Mrs. Hawksby. You're a darling in many ways, and I like you are not a woman's woman, but why do you trouble yourself about mere human beings? Because in the absence of angels, who I am sure would be horribly dull, men and women are the most fascinating things in the whole wide world. Lazy one. I am interested in the dowdy, am interested in the dancing master, I am interested in the holly boy, and I am interested in you. Why couple me with the holly boy? He is your property. Yes, and in his own guileless speech, I am making a good thing out of him. When he is slightly more reformed, and has passed his higher standard, or whatever the authorities think fit to exact from him, I shall select a pretty little girl, the Holt girl. I think and her, she waved her hands, airily, whom Mrs. Hawksby hath joined together. Let no man put asunder, that's all. And when you have yoked May Holt with the most notorious detrimental in Simla, and earned the undying hatred of Mama Holt. What will you do with me, dispenser of the destinies of the universe? Mrs. Hawksby dropped into a low chair in front of the fire, and Chin and Band gazed long and steadfastly at Mrs. Mallow. I do not know, she said, shaking her head, what I shall do with you, dear. It's obviously impossible to marry you to some one else. Your husband would object, and the experiment might not be successful after all. I think I shall begin by preventing you from what is it sleeping on alehouse benches and snoring in the sun. Don't like your quotations, they are so rude. Go to the library and bring me new books. While you sleep, no, if you don't come with me, I shall spread your newest frock on my rickshaw. And when anyone asks me what I am doing, I shall say that I am going to Phelps to get it let out. I shall take care that Mrs. McNamara sees me put your things on. There's a good girl. Mrs. Mallow groaned and obeyed, and the two went off to the library, where they found Mrs. Delville, and the man who went by the nickname of the dancing master. By that time, Mrs. Mallow was awake and eloquent. That is the creature, said Mrs. Hawksby, with the air of one pointing out a slug in the road. No, said Mrs. Mallow, the man is the creature. Good evening, Mr. Bent, I thought you were coming to tea this evening. Surely it was for tomorrow, was it not? Answered the dancing master. I understood, I fancied. I am so sorry, how very unfortunate. But Mrs. Mallow had passed on. For the practiced equivocator you said he was, murmured Mrs. Hawksby. He strikes me as a failure. Now wherefore should he have preferred a walk with the Dowd to tea with us? Elective affinities, I suppose. Both grubby Polly. I'd never forgive that woman as long as the world rolls. I forgive every woman everything, said Mrs. Mallow. He will be a sufficient punishment for her. What a common voice she has. Mrs. Delville's voice was not pretty, her carriage was even less lovely, and her raiment was strikingly neglected. All these things Mrs. Mallow noticed over the top of a magazine. Now what is there in her, said Mrs. Hawksby. Do you see what I meant about the clothes falling off? If I were a man, I would perish sooner than be seen with that ragbag. And yet she has good eyes, Buteau. What is it? She doesn't know how to use them, on my honor. She does not look, oh, look, untidiness. I can endure, but ignorance, never. The woman's a fool. HSH shall hear you. All the women in Simla are fools. Shall think I mean someone else. Now she's going out. What a thoroughly objectionable couple she and the dancing master make. Which reminds me, do you suppose they'll ever dance together? Wait and see. I don't envy her the conversation of the dancing master. Loathly man. His wife ought to be up here before long. Do you know anything about him? Only what he told me. It may be all a fiction. He married a girl, bred in the country, I think, and being an honorable, chivalrous soul, told me that he repented his bargain, and sent her to her mother as often as possibly a person who has lived in the dune since the memory of man, and goes to Mussoorie when other people go home. The wife is with her at present, so he says. Babies? One only, but he talks of his wife in a revolting way. I hated him for it. He thought he was being epigrammatic and brilliant. That is a vice peculiar to men. I dislike him, because he is generally in the wake of some girl, disappointing the eligibles. He will persecute May Holt. No more, unless I am much mistaken. No, I think Mrs. Delville may occupy his attention for a while. Do you suppose she knows that he is the head of a family? Not from his lips. He swore me to eternal secrecy, wherefore I tell you. Don't you know that type of man? Not intimately, thank goodness. As a general rule, when a man begins to abuse his wife to me, I find that the Lord gives me wherewith to answer him according to his folly, and we part with a coolness between us. I laugh. I am different. I've no sense of humor. Cultivate it then. It has been my mainstay for more years than I care to think about. A well-educated sense of humor will save a woman when religion, training, and home influences fail, and we may all need salvation sometimes. Do you suppose that the Delville woman has humor? Her dress betrays her. How can a thing who wears her supplement under her left arm have any notion of the fitness of things, much less their folly? If she discards the dancing master, after having once seen him dance, I may respect her otherwise. But are we not both assuming a great deal too much, dear? You saw the woman at Pelatishev. An hour later, you saw her walking with the dancing master. An hour later, you met her here at the library. Still with the dancing master, remember. Still with the dancing master, I admit, but why on the strength of that should you imagine? I imagine nothing. I have no imagination. I am only convinced that the dancing master is attracted to the dowd, because he is objectionable in every way, and she in every other. If I know the man as you have described him, he holds his wife in slavery at present. She is 20 years younger than he. Poor wretch, and in the end, after he has posed and swaggered, and Lita has a mouth under that ragged mustache simply made for leash, will be rewarded according to his merits. I wonder what those really are, said Mrs. Mallow. But Mrs. Hawksby, her face close to the shelf of the new books, was humming softly, "What shall he have who killed the deer?" She was a lady of unfettered speech. 1 month later, she announced her intention of calling upon Mrs. Delville. Both Mrs. Hawksby and Mrs. Mallow were in mourning wrappers, and there was a great peace in the land. I should go as I was, said Mrs. Mallow. It would be a delicate compliment to her style. Mrs. Hawksby studied herself in the glass. Assuming for a moment that she ever darkened these doors, I should put on this robe, after all the others, to show her what a mourning wrapper ought to be. It might enliven her. As it is, I shall go in the dove-color red, sweet emblem of youth and innocence, and shall put on my new gloves. If you really are going, dirty tan would be too good, and you know that dove-color spots with the rain. I care not, I may make her envious, at least I shall try, though one cannot expect very much from a woman who puts a lace tucker into her habit. Just heavens, when did she do that? Yesterday, riding with the dancing master, I met them at the back of Jacko, and the rain had made the lace lie down to complete the effect. She was wearing an unclean tirai, with the elastic under her chin. I felt almost too well content to take the trouble to despise her. The Holly boy was riding with you, what did he think? Does a boy ever notice these things? Should I like him? If he did, he stared in the rudest way. And just when I thought he had seen the elastic, he said, "There's something very taking about that face." I rebuked him on the spot. I don't approve of boys being taken by faces. Other than your own, I shouldn't be in the least surprised if the Holly boy immediately went to call. I forbade him, let her be satisfied with the dancing master and his wife. When she comes up, I am rather curious to see Mrs. Bent and the Delville woman together. Mrs. Hawksby departed, and at the end of an hour returned slightly flushed. There is no limit to the treachery of youth, I ordered the Holly boy, as he valued my patronage. Not to call the first person I literally stumble over in her poky dark little drawing-room, is of course the Holly boy. She kept us waiting 10 minutes, and then emerged as though he had been tipped out of the dirty clothes basket. You know my way, dear. When I am all put out, I was superior, rushingly superior. Lifted my eyes to heaven, and had heard of nothing, dropped my eyes on the carpet, and really didn't know, played with my card case, and supposed so. The Holly boy giggled like a girl, and I had to freeze him with scowls between the sentences. And then she sat in a heap on the edge of a couch, and managed to convey the impression that she was suffering from stomachache, at the very least. It was all I could do not to ask after her symptoms. When I rose, she grunted just like a buffalo in the water, too lazy to move. Are you certain? Am I blind, Polly? Laziness, sheer laziness? Nothing else. Or her garments were only constructed for sitting down, and I stayed, for a quarter of an hour, trying to penetrate the gloom, to guess what her surroundings were like, while she stuck out her tongue. Lucy. Well, I'll withdraw the tongue, though I'm sure if she didn't do it when I was in the room, she did the minute I was outside. At any rate, she lay in a lump, and grunted. Ask the Holly boy, dear. I believe the grunts were meant for sentences, but she spoke so indistinctly that I can't swear to it. You are incorrigible, simply. I'm not. Treat me civilly, give me peace with honor. Don't put the only available seat facing the window, and a child may eat jam in my lap before church. But I resent being grunted at, wouldn't you? Do you suppose that she communicates her views on life and love to the dancing master in a set of modulated GRMPHS? You attach too much importance to the dancing master. He came as we went, and the dowd grew almost cordial at the sight of him. He smiled greasily, and moved about that darkened dog kennel in a suspiciously familiar way. Don't be uncharitable, any sin but that ill forgive. Listen to the voice of history. I am only describing what I saw. He entered the heap on the sofa, revived slightly, and the Holly boy and I came away together. He is disillusioned, but I felt it my duty to lecture him severely for going there, and that's all. Now, for pity's sake, leave the wretched creature and the dancing master alone. They never did you any harm. No harm to dress as an example and a stumbling block for half Simla. And then to find this person who is dressed by the hand of God, not that I wish to disparage him for a moment. But you know the ticket hersy way he attires those lilies of the field thighs person, draws the eyes of men and some of them nice men. It's almost enough to make one discard clothing. I told the Holly boy so. And what did that sweet youth do? Turned shelpink and looked across the far blue hills like a distressed cherub. I talking wildly Polly, let me say my say. And I shall be calm otherwise, I may go abroad and disturb Simla with a few original reflections. Excepting always your own sweet self, there isn't a single woman in the land who understands me when I am what's the word. Teat Felly suggested Mrs. Mallow. Exactly, and now let us have tiffin. The demands of society are exhausting. And as Mrs. Delville says here, Mrs. Hawksby, to the horror of the kitmakers, lapsed into a series of grunts while Mrs. Mallow stared in lazy surprise. God jai us a good conceit of ourselves, said Mrs. Hawksby, piously returning to her natural speech. Now, in any other woman that would have been vulgar, I am consumed with curiosity to see Mrs. Bent. I expect complications. Woman of one idea, said Mrs. Mallow, shortly, all complications are as old as the hills I have lived through or near Alalal. And yet do not understand that men and women never behave twice alike. I am old who was young if ever I put my head in your lap. You dear big skeptic, you will learn that my parting is gauzy, but never, no, never have I lost my interest in men and women, Polly. I shall see this business out to the bitter end. I am going to sleep, said Mrs. Mallow calmly. I never interfere with men or women unless I am compelled, and she retired with dignity to her own room. Mrs. Hawksby's curiosity was not long left ungratified, for Mrs. Bent came up to Simla a few days after the conversation faithfully reported above, and pervaded them all by her husband's side. Behold, said Mrs. Hawksby, thoughtfully rubbing her nose, that is the last link of the chain, if we omit the husband of the Delville, whoever he may be, let me consider the Bents. And the Delvilles inhabit the same hotel, and the Delville is detested by the Waddido, you know the Waddy who is almost as big a dowd the Waddy, also abominates the male Bent, for which if her other sins do not weigh too heavily, she will eventually be caught up to heaven. Don't be irreverent, said Mrs. Mallow. I like Mrs. Bent's face. I am discussing the Waddy, returned Mrs. Hawksby. Loftily, the Waddy will take the female Bent apart, after having borrowed yes everything that she can from hairpins to babies' bottles, such, my dear, is life in a hotel. The Waddy will tell the female Bent facts and fictions about the dancing master and the dowd. Lucy, I should like you better if you were not always looking into people's back bedrooms. Anybody can look into their front drawing rooms, and remember whatever I do, and whatever I look I never talk as the Waddy will let us hope, that the dancing master's greasy smile and manner of the pedagogue will soften the heart of that cow his wife, if mouth speak truth. I should think that little Mrs. Bent could get very angry on occasion. But what reason has she for being angry? What reason the dancing master in himself is a reason. How does it go? If in his life some trivial errors fall, look in his face, and y'all believe them, all I am prepared to credit any evil of the dancing master, because I hate him so, and the dowd is so disgustingly badly dressed. That she too is capable of every iniquity, I always prefer to believe the best of everybody, it saves so much trouble. Very good, I prefer to believe the worst, it saves useless expenditure of sympathy, and you may be quite certain that the Waddy believes with me. Mrs. Mallow sighed and made no answer. The conversation was holden after dinner, while Mrs. Hawksby was dressing for a dance. I am too tired to go, pleaded Mrs. Mallow, and Mrs. Hawksby left her in peace till 2 in the morning, when she was aware of emphatic knocking at her door. Don't be very angry, dear, said Mrs. Hawksby. My idiot of an ayah has gone home, and as I hope to sleep tonight there isn't a soul in the place to unlace me. Oh, this is too bad, said Mrs. Mallow sulkily. Can't help it, I am a lone lorn grass widow, dear, but I will not sleep in my stays, and such news too, oh, do unlace me. There's a darling the dowd the dancing master I, and the Holly boy, you know the north veranda. How can I do anything if you spin round like this, protested Mrs. Mallow, fumbling with the knot of the laces. Oh, I forget, I must tell my tale without the aid of your eyes. Do you know you've lovely eyes, dear? Well, to begin with, I took the Holly boy to a Kalajugga. Did he want much taking? Lots. There was an arrangement of loose boxes in Canets, and she was in the next one talking to him. Which how explain? You know what I mean? The Dowd and the dancing master, we could hear every word, and we listened shameless suspiciously, the Holly boy. Polly, I quite love that woman. This is interesting there, now turn round what happened. One moment blessed relief I've been looking forward to taking them off for the last half hour which is ominous at my time of life. But as I was saying we listened, and heard the Dowd drawl worse than ever she drops her final GS like a barmaid, or a blue-blooded aided camp look here. You get too fond zero me she said. And the dancing master owned it was so in language that nearly made me Roman 99 the Dowd reflected for a while. Then we heard her say look here Mr. Bent. Why are you such an awful liar I nearly exploded. While the dancing master denied the charge, it seems that he never told her he was a married man. I said he wouldn't. And she had taken this to heart on personal grounds, I suppose. She drawled along for 5 minutes reproaching him with his perfidy, and grew quite motherly. Now, you've got a nice little wife of your own you, have she said she's 10 times too good for a fat old man like you. And look here, you never told me a word about her, and I've been thinking about it a good deal. And I think you're a liar wasn't that delicious the dancing master, maundered and raved, till the Holly boy suggested that he should burst in and beat him his voice, runs up into an impassioned squeak when he is afraid the Dowd must be an extraordinary woman. She explained that had he been a bachelor, she might not have objected to his devotion. But since he was a married man, and the father of a very nice baby, she considered him a hypocrite, and this she repeated twice. She wound up her drawl with an I am tellin' you this, because your wife is angry with me, and I hate quarrelin' with any other woman and I like your wife. You know how you have behaved for the last 6 weeks. You shouldn't have done it. Indeed, you shouldn't. You're too old and fat. Can't you imagine how the dancing master would wince at that? Now go away, she said. I don't want to tell you what I think of you, because I think you are not nice. Ill stay here till the next dance begins. Did you think that the creature had so much in her? I never studied her as closely as you Roman 999. It sounds unnatural what happened. The dancing master attempted blandishment reproof jocularity, and the style of the Lord High Warden, and I had almost to pinch the Holly boy to make him keep quiet. She grunted at the end of each sentence. And in the end, he went away swearing to himself quite like a man in a novel. He looked more objectionable than ever. I laughed. I love that woman in spite of her clothes. And now, I'm going to bed. What do you think of it? I shan't begin to think till the morning, said Mrs. Mallow, yawning perhaps. She spoke the truth. They do fly into it by accident sometimes. Mrs. Hawksby's account of her eavesdropping was an ornate one, but truthful in the main for reasons best known to herself. Mrs. Shady Delville had turned upon Mr. Bent and rent him limb from limb, casting him away limp and disconcerted air. She withdrew the light of her eyes from him, permanently being a man of resource and anything but pleased in that he had been called both old and fat. He gave Mrs. Bent to understand that he had, during her absence in the dune, been the victim of unceasing persecution at the hands of Mrs. Delville. And he told the tale so often, and with such eloquence that he ended in believing it, while his wife marveled at the manners and customs of some women. When the situation showed signs of languishing, Mrs. Waddy was always on hand to wake the smoldering fires of suspicion in Mrs. Bent's bosom, and to contribute generally to the peace and comfort of the hotel. Mr. Bent's life was not a happy one, for if Mrs. Waddy's story were true, he was argued his wife untrustworthy, to the last degree. If his own statement was true, his charms of manner and conversation were so great that he needed constant surveillance, and he received it till he repented genuinely of his marriage, and neglected his personal appearance. Mrs. Delville alone in the hotel was unchanged. She removed her chair some 6 paces toward the head of the table, and occasionally in the twilight ventured on timid overtures of friendship to Mrs. Bent which were repulsed. She does it for my sake, hinted the virtuous Bent. A dangerous and designing woman, purred Mrs. Waddy. Worst of all, every other hotel in Simla was full. Polly, are you afraid of diphtheria? Of nothing in the world except smallpox. Diphtheria kills, but it doesn't disfigure. Why do you ask? Because the Bent baby has got it, and the whole hotel is upside down. In consequence, the Waddy has set her 5 young on the rail, and fled. The dancing master fears for his precious throat, and that miserable little woman, his wife, has no notion of what ought to be done. She wanted to put it into a mustard bath for croup. Where did you learn all this? Just now on the mall. Dr. Howland told me the manager of the hotel is abusing the Bents, and the Bents are abusing the manager. They are a feckless couple. Well, what's on your mind? This and I know it's a grave thing to ask. Would you seriously object to my bringing the child over here with its mother? On the most strict understanding that we see nothing of the dancing master. He will be only too glad to stay away, Polly, you're an angel. The woman really is at her wits' end. And you know nothing about her, careless, and would hold her up to public scorn if it gave you a minute's amusement. Therefore you risk your life for the sake of her brat? No, Lou, I am not the angel. I shall keep to my rooms and avoid her. But do as you please, only tell me why you do it. Mrs. Hawksby's eyes softened. She looked out of the window and back into Mrs. Mallow's face. I don't know, said Mrs. Hawksby simply. You dear Pollyann, for aught you knew, you might have taken my fringe off. Never do that again without warning now. Well, get the rooms ready. I don't suppose I shall be allowed to circulate in society for a month. And I also, thank goodness, I shall at last get all the sleep I want. Much to Mrs. Bent's surprise, she and the baby were brought over to the house almost before she knew where she was. Bent was devoutly and undisguisedly thankful, for he was afraid of the infection, and also hoped that a few weeks in the hotel alone with Mrs. Delville might lead to explanations. Mrs. Bent had thrown her jealousy to the winds in her fear for her child's life. We can give you good milk, said Mrs. Hawksby to her, and our house is much nearer to the doctor's than the hotel, and you won't feel as though you were living in a hostile camp. Where is the dear Mrs. Waddy? She seemed to be a particular friend of yours. They've all left me, said Mrs. Bent bitterly. Mrs. Waddy went first. She said I ought to be ashamed of myself for introducing diseases there, and I am sure it wasn't my fault, that little Dora. How nice, cooed Mrs. Hawksby. The waddy is an infectious disease herself, more quickly caught than the plague, and the taker runs presently mad. I lived next door to her at the Elysium 3 years ago. Now see, you won't give us the least trouble, and I've ornamented all the house with sheets soaked in carbolic. It smells comforting, doesn't it? Remember, I am always in call, and my eye is at your service. When yours goes to her meals and if you cry, I'll never forgive you. Dora Bent occupied her mother's unprofitable attention through the day, and the night the doctor called thrice in the 24 hours, and the house reeked with the smell of the condensed fluid chlorine water and carbolic acid washes. Mrs. Mallow kept to her own room. She considered that she had made sufficient concessions in the cause of humanity, and Mrs. Hawksby was more esteemed by the doctor as a help in the sick room than the half-distraught mother. I know nothing of illness, said Mrs. Hawksby to the doctor, only tell me what to do and I'll do it. Keep that crazy woman from kissing the child, and let her have as little to do with the nursing as you possibly can, said the doctor. I'd turn her out of the sick room, but that I honestly believe she'd die of anxiety. She is less than no good, and I depend on you and the ayahs, remember. Mrs. Hawksby accepted the responsibility, though it painted olive hollows under her eyes, and forced her to her oldest dresses. Mrs. Bent clung to her with more than childlike faith. I know y'all make Dora well want you, she said at least 20 times a day, and 20 times a day. Mrs. Hawksby answered valiantly, of course I will. But Dora did not improve, and the doctor seemed to be always in the house. There's some danger of the thing taking a bad turn, he said. I'll come over between 3 and 4 in the morning tomorrow. Good gracious, said Mrs. Hawksby, he never told me what the turn would be. My education has been horribly neglected, and I have only this foolish motherwoman to fall back upon. The night wore through slowly, and Mrs. Hawksby dozed in a chair by the fire. There was a dance at the Viceregal Lodge, and she dreamed of it till she was aware of Mrs. Bent's anxious eyes staring into her own. Wake up, do something, cried Mrs. Bent piteously. Dora's choking to death. Do you mean to let her die? Mrs. Hawksby jumped to her feet and bent over the bed. The child was fighting for breath, while the mother wrung her hands despairing. Oh, what can I do? What can you do? She won't stay still. I can't hold her. Why didn't the doctor say this was coming? Screamed Mrs. Bent. Won't you help me? She's dying. I've never seen a child die before, stammered Mrs. Hawksby feebly, and then let none blame her weakness. After the strain of long watching, she broke down and covered her face with her hands. The ayahs on the threshold snored peacefully. There was a rattle of rickshaw wheels, below the clash of an opening door, a heavy step on the stairs, and Mrs. Delville entered to find Mrs. Bent screaming for the doctor as she ran round the room. Mrs. Hawksby, her hands to her ears, and her face buried in the chintz of a chair, was quivering with pain at each cry from the bed, and murmuring, "Thank God, I never bore a child. Oh, thank God, I never bore a child." Mrs. Delville looked at the bed for an instant, took Mrs. Bent by the shoulders, and said quietly, "Get me some caustic, be quick." The mother obeyed mechanically. Mrs. Delville had thrown herself down by the side of the child and was opening its mouth. "Oh, you're killing her," cried Mrs. Bent. "Where's the doctor? Leave her alone." Mrs. Delville made no reply for a minute, but busied herself with the child. "Now the caustic, and hold a lamp behind my shoulder. Will you do as you are told? The acid bottle, if you don't know what I mean," she said. A second time Mrs. Delville bent over the child. Mrs. Hawksby, her face still hidden, sobbed and shivered. One of the ayahs staggered sleepily into the room, yawning. "Dr. Sahib, come." Mrs. Delville turned her head. "You're only just in time," she said. "It was chalk in her when I came in and I've burned it." There was no sign of the membrane getting to the air passages after the last steaming. "It was the general weakness I feared," said the doctor half to himself. And he whispered as he looked, "You've done what I should have been afraid to do without consultation." "She was dyin'," said Mrs. Delville under her breath. "Can you do anything? What a mercy it was I went to the dance." Mrs. Hawksby raised her head. "Is it all over?" she gasped. "I am useless, worse than useless. What are you doing here?" She stared at Mrs. Delville, and Mrs. Bent, realizing for the first time who was the goddess from the machine, stared also. Then Mrs. Delville made explanation, putting on a dirty long glove and smoothing a crumpled and ill-fitting ball dress. "I was at the dance and the doctor was telling me about your baby Bane, so Roman 99, so I came away early and your door was open, and I lost my boy this way 6 months ago and I've been trying to forget it ever since, and I'm very sorry for intrudin' and anything that has happened." Mrs. Bent was putting out the doctor's eye with a lamp as he stooped over Dora. "Take it away," said the doctor. "I think the child will do, thanks to you, Mrs. Delville. I should have come too late, but I assure Yao," was addressing himself to Mrs. Delville, "I had not the faintest reason to expect this. The membrane must have grown like a mushroom. Will one of you help me, please?" He had reason for the last sentence. Mrs. Hawksby had thrown herself into Mrs. Delville's arms, where she was weeping bitterly, and Mrs. Bent was unpicturesquely mixed up with both, while from the tangle came the sound of many sobs and much promiscuous kissing. "Good gracious, I've spoilt all your beautiful roses," said Mrs. Hawksby, lifting her head from the lump of crushed gum and calico atrocities on Mrs. Delville's shoulder, and hurrying to the doctor. Mrs. Delville picked up her shawl and slouched out of the room, mopping her eyes with the glove that she had not put on. "I always said she was more than a woman," sobbed Mrs. Hawksby hysterically, "and that proves it." 6 weeks later, Mrs. Bent and Dora had returned to the hotel. Mrs. Hawksby had come out of the valley of humiliation, had ceased to reproach herself for her collapse in an hour of need, and was even beginning to direct the affairs of the world as before. "So nobody died and everything went off as it should, and I kissed the Dowd Polly. I feel so old, does it show in my face?" Kisses don't as a rule, do they? Of course, you know what the result of the Dowd's providential arrival has been. They ought to build her a statue, only no sculptor dare copy those skirts. "Ah," said Mrs. Mallow quietly, "she has found another reward. The dancing master has been smirking through Simla, giving everyone to understand that she came because of her undying love for him to save his child, and all Simla naturally believes this. But Mrs. Bent believes it more than anyone else. She won't speak to the Dowd. Now, isn't the dancing master an angel?" Mrs. Hawksby lifted up her voice and raged. Till bedtime, the doors of the 2 rooms stood open. "Polly," said a voice from the darkness, "what did that Americaneresque globetrotter girl say last season, when she was tipped out of her rickshaw turning a corner, some absurd adjective that made the man who picked her up explode?" "Paltry," said Mrs. Mallow through her nose like this. "Hey, how paltry." "Exactly," said the voice. "Hey, how paltry it all is." "Which?" "Everything. Baby's diphtheria, Mrs. Bent, and the dancing master I whooping in a chair, and the Dowd dropping in from the clouds. I wonder what the motive weighs all the motives." "It's dumb. What do you think?" "Don't ask me. She was a woman. Go to sleep."